Okay, so thank you everyone for being here and welcome to the third webinar jointly organized by the Global Plant Council and Wikifarmer. This time we will talk about regenerative agriculture, why and how can farmers adopt it, a global overview. So, and with global, we mean we have brought to you three different perspectives, one from the European Union, from the Netherlands, one from Latin America, Argentina, and finally one from Africa, from the country of Kenya. Stay tuned until the end for the Q&A, as always. Remember that this is being recorded. Sorry, it's that I'm hearing myself so loudly.
We can hear you quite clearly though, no worries.
Okay.
Hello everyone, I am Stella, I'm the Senior Content Manager of Wikifarmer Library. I'm excited to be with Isabel for one more webinar. It's the third that we organize, as I said, and stay tuned because we have such an amazing group of speakers today and a very interesting topic. So we promise that you're going to like this webinar a lot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stella, for saving me. So first, I wanted to reintroduce you in case you don't know about the Global Plant Council, who we are and what we do. My name is Isabel Mendoza. As I think I said, I'm the Chief Communications Officer for this organization. That is a global coalition of plant science organizations from around the world. Currently, we are over 25 organizations from all continents. We are mostly plant science professional societies and also research organizations. Our aim and objective is to raise awareness about the importance of plant science for society while building a community and a sense of community for said plant scientists. Our final aim eventually is to become the voice of reference for plant science and plant scientists around the world, meaning that any person who eventually will like to know what plant science thinks about a certain issue will be able to come to us and find the answer. We do this through many different activities. I want to just to highlight these three. First, we showcase the latest plant research, both in our website and our social media daily, meaning that we share one plant science-based news every day. And then we also host the Early Career Researcher International Network that helps early career researchers on plant science find a new job, fill a new grant, improve their networking, and also improve their science communication and dissemination skill for their research. And finally, we work on policy. We issue policy and position statements. And lately, since last year, we have started attending some global conventions on science policy, such as the Convention on Biological Diversity last year in Montreal. And this year we will be attending the Climate Summit in Dubai, bringing with us the views of plant scientists and advocating on their behalf. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much for your attention. If you are interested in contacting with us, you can do it through many means. First, of course, my email, our website, and all our social media channels. And so that's all from my side, and I give the floor back to Stella.
Hi again, let me share my screen. Perfect. I think you can see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So let's start with the agenda. As Isabel said before, it's this webinar is co-organized by both Wikifarmer and the Global Plant Council. It's the third that we organize. And today with us, we have three great scientists and professionals that are very, very relevant to regenerative agriculture, working either in the scientific and academic community or directly with the farmers. And I think both sides have a very high interest for all the audience here. So first, we will start with Loekie Schreefel from Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands to give us the European Union perspective and, of course, the introduction to regenerative agriculture to give us a definition and some principles so all of us can be on the same page. Then the floor will be to Maina with Boomitra from East Africa, based in Kenya. We'll focus on which climate smart cultivation practices can farmers adopt to improve profit and become more resilient. And also, she will be focusing on carbon credit system. Finally, Ernesto Martín Uliarte from Instituto Nacional de Tecnología Agropecuaria from Argentina will speak about sustainable soil management, presenting case studies and specific examples and practices. Stay until the end because we will try to answer as many of your questions as possible. So an overview of the attendees today. I always like this slide to see a bit of the numbers. We're very lucky to have with us many people from Asia and Africa, as you can see, but also from Europe and America. We have people registered even from Australia and Philippines, which is quite late in the night for them. So if they're among us, I'm excited to have you here. And a bit of the background of the participants today, 30% of them are farmers, students, policymakers, and 70% are mainly scientists. I said something about Q&A, so to pose your questions, please use the tool that you will see at the bottom of your screen. We'll see all the questions and we'll try to see which speaker can answer its question, but if you have any preference, and you can mention, of course, the name of the speaker to help us also group the questions a bit. So we'll answer all this at the end. Please do not use the chat for the questions, but if you want to say hello, of course, feel free. As Isabel mentioned, we're live on YouTube as well. That means that the video of this, the recording will stay uploaded and available for you to access anytime after the live, both at the Global Plant Council and Farmers YouTube pages. So after two very successful webinars, we're excited to present regenerative farming to you. And let me tell you a couple of things about Wikifarmer, which I represent as the Senior Content Manager of the library. So our goal of organization is to democratize agriculture by empowering farmers through free knowledge sharing and giving them access to the global and local market to sell the products at fair prices. We're very lucky that FAO has recognized our efforts, characterizing us as the Wikipedia of farming. Our marketplace is one of the leading B2B marketplace of agriculture food products with over 13,000 registered farmers. And as you can see, many products. We assist the farmers to find directly and sell the products to buyers. So by decreasing the length of the food value chain, we try to increase the profit of the farmers. The library part where I present, we have a global reach. We have close to 800,000 unique visitors per month. As you can see that we're a pretty young company, only started in 2017. Of course, all of our content is free and we translate to 17 languages to improve the accessibility. We try to cover any topic that could be relevant for the agri-food sector. And of course, among our audience, you will find farmers, agronomists, students, and any other stakeholder of the agri-food sector. We managed to reach over 1,000 articles in English, and on the right you can see some data about the ranking of countries based on the number of visitors. So you see that we are truly global, even with the top 10, 20 countries that I saw here. The content, as I said, it's quite rich. You will find any subject that is relevant for the agri-food sector. And we truly believe in the flow of information, not only from the scientists to the farmers, which is very, very important, but among farmers as well, and from farmers to scientists. And that is one of the main reasons why we have these webinars, because they're mainly discussion panels between scientists and farmers, thanks to the Q&A at the end. Of course, we couldn't have done all of this without the help of our many, many contributing authors. As you see, the network is quite extensive. And among them, you'll find professors from top universities, scientists, researchers, farmers, agronomists, students, etc. Some examples can be found here or through our page, of course. We try to promote their work, the work of our contributing authors, as well as we can, so they have their own profile with information about their work and all the content gathered there. And of course, they will have access to the translated version of the work for free. We're responsible to do that. So it's a nice opportunity for the scientist that listens to us to disseminate their work in a free way in front of a very large and relevant audience. To do that, if you want to send us your article, you can submit it through our homepage or contact me directly to help you decide on the topic and assist you any way I can. So we're not alone, and together with the Global Plant Council, we have almost 50 partners with us nowadays, and you can see that they're coming from all over the world. You will find among them universities, organizations, institutions of any kind, even research projects. And a new project that is coming up will launch Wikifarmer Academy shortly, within October, where we will try to give even more content to the agri-food sector and the stakeholders in the format of handbooks and guides, from how to cultivate or introducing new terms, but it will be in a more step-by-step way. So stay tuned, and we'll let you know when it's live. So thank you all for your attention, and stay tuned until the end. Enjoy the webinar. We're excited to have you here. So let me stop sharing my screen. Great. So the floor now will go to Loekie Schreefel. Dr. Loekie Schreefel is a postdoctoral researcher at Wageningen University and Research in the Farming System Ecology Group. He has a very strong knowledge background, of course, in mechanical engineering and biosystem engineering. During his bachelor's and master's, Loekie he was specialized in the design of sustainable large-scale production systems for edible insects, and collaborated with many large-scale insect producers, researchers, and institutions to assess the environmental impact of this practice by using modeling and empirical research. Regenerative agriculture is in the core of his PhD. His PhD was part of the TFN's Top Institute of Food and Nutrition project, and Regenerative Farming project. This project aimed to bring scientists, sector organizations, farmers, and food chain companies together to identify the characteristics of regenerative agriculture. And after finishing his PhD very recently, Loekie continues working on the transition towards regenerative farming. So you understand that he's the right person to start this webinar, to give us the introduction. So Loekie, thank you very much for being here with us and introducing us to regenerative agriculture. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Stella. I was not really prepared for such a nice introduction, but thank you for that. It was a big background check. So indeed, I'm Loekie Schreefel, really happy to be here. I indeed finished quite recently my PhD on the very topic of regenerative agriculture, and indeed continuing that research. In my PhD, I really focused on finding the meaning of regenerative agriculture, but also especially what are the environmental impacts of regenerative agriculture. And in a later stage, I also tried to research how can we monitor the success of regenerative agriculture? When is a farmer regenerative or not? But today we will not discuss that. Maybe the other speakers. Today I will solely focus on explore with you what regenerative agriculture is, and also give a little bit of an introduction to that topic. So let's start at the beginning. I think we all know that we need food, and we very much like for food that we are eating most of the times. And we also know that the way we produce our food is considered nowadays environmentally problematic. And I really want to quickly highlight a framework, the planetary boundary framework, which shows the environmental pressures we're actually putting on our planet. And quite recently, and that's why I wanted to show this, is for the first time, researchers of the Stockholm Resilience Center were able to quantify these environmental limits and where we are on these limits. And this is very dramatic, to be honest, because 6 of these 9 boundaries are currently crossed. And these boundaries, these limits really present if we can still survive as human beings on this earth. And what is really important about this is that agriculture is, of course, the cornerstone of our global food production system. And we contribute significantly to these environmental pressures. If you just look at climate change, agriculture contributes for 22% to global greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at biodiversity loss, 68% of the species we currently have are at risk of extinction. And if you go further, we also see more and more unhappy farmers. I don't know if you know the news a little bit in the Netherlands, because I saw there was a lot of people outside of Europe, but we faced a lot of protests in the Netherlands with farmers really for several months blocking highways, and actually at one point also became aggressive to policymakers in our Ministry of Agriculture because of their legislation. And these farmers were not regenerative farmers per se, but were especially conventional farmers, which were confronted with new legislation to be more environmentally friendly. In this case, they tried to reduce the nitrogen emissions in the Netherlands, but this was really drastic. And the governments wanted to slash livestock numbers with sometimes more than 50%. So it was really a problem in the Netherlands. My intention of today was not really to give a pessimistic story or a depressing story, but it did set the scene for agriculture, how we face it now today. And I think, and that is going to be the nice thing today, we will discuss new approaches of farming that actually form solutions for these challenges. So if you talk about agriculture, there's actually various solutions proposed. People talk more and more about sustainable intensification. In the Netherlands, the Ministry of the Netherlands, they actually presented a vision about circular agriculture. And Stella told you that already had a webinar about climate smart agriculture. The organic movement is also growing a lot. In the Netherlands, we only have like 3% of the farmers being organic. But if you look, for example, at Switzerland, more than 10% is already organic. And yeah, more recently, also regenerative agriculture is really popping up as a solution. And actually, regenerative agriculture is kind of now at the forefront of this approach of sustainable farming. It becomes really popular. If you look at the number of articles over time, and this is only the peer-reviewed articles, we see that more or less since 2018, this is really skyrocketing. So it's dramatically increasing in attention. And if you then look at the actors actually supporting regenerative agriculture, we also see a lot of differences in there. And so if you look at the industry supporting regenerative agriculture, you see that they're working on certification, on trying to support farmers in their transition. You see different policymakers trying to associate themselves with regenerative agriculture or envision different objectives. We see farmers that are already claiming to be regenerative. And we see NGOs and knowledge institutes doing more and more research about the matter. So when I started the PhD in 2018, exactly when this regenerative approach of farming became more popular, I faced a challenge because my focus was really on finding out environmental impacts of regenerative practices. But all these different actors you see here had their own definition for regenerative agriculture. And to really find out these impacts of these regenerative practices, I first needed to get an understanding of what regenerative agriculture was. And this was really confusing because they all had their own understanding. So what I started to do is I did a quick scan. So I just looked on the internet, like probably many people here today did, and tried to collect these definitions and make sense of it. And this kind of became a word cloud, really messy. I saw some overlaps, some convergence, but especially a lot of divergence between these definitions, a lot of differences. So when I did this and was thinking about it, I said, well, actually, I cannot continue my studies if I don't have a real clear picture of what regenerative agriculture is. So what we did is we started a systematic literature review to really look in the scientific literature about how different researchers define regenerative agriculture. So when we did a systematic literature review, we found almost 300 different articles with definitions of regenerative agriculture. And based on a level of convergence, we tried to create themes of regenerative agriculture. And if you go take a look at the themes, they look like this. Here you see the core themes of regenerative agriculture, which we found. And you can immediately see that this looks really complex. And maybe this nicely reflects the complexity of regenerative agriculture. But today I will try to talk you through this figure to make you understand what is in there. So first, if you look at this figure, you see that these themes reflect different objectives and activities defining regenerative agriculture. And if you look more closely, you also see that these themes relate to different levels of ambitions, to different scales. So if you look at the improvement of soil biodiversity or improvement of soil carbon, they relate more to a farm level, especially these activities are, of course, farm level activities. But if you look at themes like regenerate the system or reduce environmental externalities, these are actually quite vague and a more higher level objectives. Then, if you take another look, we see also that the themes relate to different dimensions of sustainability. We see actually that the majority of themes here relate to environmental aspects. And we actually created an extra pillar called the soil because we saw that there was a really strong focus on the soil in these definitions of regenerative agriculture. All the practices are really related in these articles to the soil and also a lot of the themes. But we also saw that there were social and economic themes. In this case, we only found actually one overlapping theme for the social aspects and one overlapping theme for these economic aspects. It does not mean that these social and economic aspects are unimportant in regenerative agriculture. Because if you actually look at the number of articles referring to a theme, you see that it's actually still quite high. The reason why we couldn't create more themes on these social and economic aspects was a lot of divergence within the theme itself. So for example, in this social theme, also there's animal welfare, but there was only one article mentioning animal welfare. The whole article was dedicated on animal welfare and regenerative agriculture. But because there was only one article, we couldn't create an underlying theme. So if you now look at this figure and ask yourself, what is regenerative agriculture? I think it becomes quite clear that there's not one uniform definition for regenerative agriculture, because these themes and these objectives are not equally relevant for every farming systems, and also these activities are not equally applicable for every local context. If you imagine, if you ask what is regenerative agriculture to a dairy farmer in peat soil, this is very common in the Netherlands to have these farmers, they will probably focused on climate regulation. They they have cows with their methane emissions, but more important, they face a lot of carbon emissions from their peat soils, which is oxidizing. So probably they will focus, if they talk about a regenerative agriculture, really on this climate regulation. In this case, the theme is called Alleviate Climate Change. But if you ask the same question to an arbor farmer on a peat, on a clay soil, they will give a very much different answer. They will probably focus on soil biodiversity or soil compaction. So this is very different. But then again, I think if you do one step backwards and ask such a question on a higher level, for example, to policymakers, I do think there's some convergence in here. So if you ask to a policymaker, what is regenerative agriculture? We can tell him based on his review, well, we think that regenerative agriculture is a farming approach that really uses the soil as the basis, regenerates and contributes to multiple ecosystem services, and enhances not only environmental, but also social and economic dimensions of sustainable food production. And we published this article a couple of years ago in Global Food Security, and maybe, I don't know if that's possible, but maybe the organization can share this article in the chat. It's publicly available, so it's open access. But what I wanted to quickly tell is, based on my PhD, and especially this review, is really set out a new line of research in our group. Because in our group, we work with various models from the field level to the global level with various purposes. So we have a model called the Soil Navigator, which is really used in our group to assess soil health at the farm level for different farmers, but also try to suggest different practices for farmers to use. We have a model called the CFOS model, and here we can implement changes like dietary changes. Say, hey, what if the whole world is vegan or vegetarian? How much greenhouse gas emissions would we still have? What would be the land use change? And based on this new trajectory of regenerative agriculture, we actually asked the question, well, what if Europe or the whole world becomes regenerative? What would be then the emissions? What would be then or soil health or performance? And this was actually a question that we were not able to answer yet. So we started thinking, so we kind of now start to know what regenerative agriculture is, but these environmental impacts are sometimes still really unclear. So what we have said now is the coming 3 years at least, we want to set up a European database to start with. If it is a success, we go global with it, to collect and map out regenerative initiatives across Europe and try to collect the data there is and make it open access to actually put this in this kind of models and for other researchers to use. So this is a quick call for action. So if there's an audience here and they work in different farmer networks in Europe, please contact me, and then we can set up some collaboration in sharing this data. But for the rest of the webinar, I actually wanted to give 2 quick takeaway messages. So I hope from this review, we learn that if we talk about regenerative agriculture, we really see, first of all, the soil as the basis. And secondly, we now know that the definition of regenerative agriculture is not uniform. And therefore, we really think that tailor-made solutions are key. And I think in the follow-up presentations, we will see examples of this, because these presentations will bring you to Kenya and Argentina, and then you will hear how regenerative agriculture looks like there. And with that, I want to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Loekie, for this great presentation, explaining what regenerative, or trying to explain more or less what regenerative agriculture means for many people, especially for what it means for policymakers, because that could be, in the end, what helps understand what it's doing with the policies around the world. And next, we have Anne. I want to introduce our next speaker, that is Maina. Mrs. Maina is a dedicated professional committed to fostering development and sustainable growth. Her extensive experience spans project coordination, policy advocacy, leadership roles, and reflecting her ability to employ effective business strategies. Is a tech-savvy and data-driven approach enhances her expertise in areas such as climate change adaptation, carbon markets, agriculture, food security, and development. And currently, she works various roles, including a project lead for Boomitra in East Africa. Her educational background foundation includes a bachelor in horticulture. And thank you so much, Anne, for being here. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Dr. Loekie, that was a very interesting presentation. Great segue into what we're going to be talking about right now. So let me just put up my screen. Yes. So as Isabel has done, as told us, my name is Anne Maina. I do lead the projects in East Africa at Boomitra, and I am based in Kenya, Nairobi. So what we do at Boomitra is we incentivize farmers with carbon credits for their improved agricultural practices. Just as Dr. Loekie said, there is no uniform definition of regenerative agriculture. So for us, we call it improved agricultural practices. We also term it as climate smart agriculture. But when you look at what are these practices that we're naming as so, they all circle back to the same things. So we've already been told about the impact that climate change is having on us. It's creating such a gigascale problem. And we are also seeing that our soils are highly degraded. And twining these things together, you realize that our smallholder farmers are struggling to provide for their families. So I'll focus a bit on the agriculture side, mostly around smallholder farmers and what they're doing to be able to improve their resilience. So as I mentioned, we are focused on improved agricultural practices, and someone may call it climate smart agriculture. So these climate smart agriculture practices, based on our understanding, have three pillars, where one is you need to sustainably increase agricultural productivity and incomes, which is one benefit of actually practicing these climate smart agriculture practices. It also helps us adapt to and also build resilience of our people and also our food systems towards climate change. And last but not least, it also helps us reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. So for you to realize the scope of these climate smart agricultural practices, you need to identify the synergies and also the trade-offs between these three pillars. This is going to be very crucial for you to successfully promote the adoption of these improved agricultural practices. So just to talk about the first pillar, which is to increase the productivity, that is one big potential of climate smart agriculture practices. When you adopt these practices, you're able to produce more, and the food that you produce is better, and you're also able to lead to improved nutrition security. Once you're able to produce more, you're also able to boost your income, and also this helps you increase income for your households. The other pillar that I will talk about is enhancing the resilience of our farmers. When you adopt improved agricultural practices or climate smart agriculture practices or regenerative agricultural practices, you're able to reduce the vulnerability to drought situations. We have increased pest situations and diseases, but with these practices, you're able to mitigate this, and you're also able to increase your resilience to that and other kind of risks that may come and shocks as well. So this helps you to improve your capacity to adapt and also to grow. And it helps you to be able to, to be able to adapt to the coming changes, even in the long-term stresses that may come. The third pillar would be to reduce the emissions. So this might be a focus I'll talk about at the end, where we are able to help our farmers layer onto the benefits with carbon credits. So when you adapt these improved practices or regenerative agriculture practices, you're able to have lower emission per food produced, and you're also able to avoid deforestation, probably by practices such as agroforestry. And this helps sometimes cut out carbon that is already in the environment, reducing the concentration in the environment. There are a couple of practices that are being implemented across the globe. I'll talk about a few that we are implementing in our organization, and also which may cut across what is happening in the African continent. So we have found that practicing organic, adapting and also increasing the use of organic manure has a positive impact on your soil. And this could be animal manure, or it could also be compost manure, which is easily accessible to our farmers. We also promote the use of minimum tillage, and this is highly used across the continent, where we have people who use reapers, which are able to till minimally. We also use chisels. They also use things such as standard basins, and they also weed minimally and also sometimes do not. And they also promote practices such as potato surface planting, which is very specific to the potato production sector. Another way to actually increase the positive impact on your soil. You remember when Dr. Loekie was talking about regenerative agriculture, it revolves around a couple of things, such as the benefits to the planet, the benefits to the people, the benefits to the soil, and also it being profitable for it to even make sense for people to adapt it. So when you have like soil cover, you're able to retain the nutrients in the soil. You're also able to retain the organic matter that is in the soil. And sometimes when this soil cover decomposes, it increases the organic matter that is in the soil, increasing your soil organic carbon. Other practices that are being practiced are things like crop rotation and also intercropping, where we have found that that interdependency between cereals such as the legumes, such as beans, soybeans, the groundnuts, and intercropping that with things such as maize creates a good dependency, which could increase your amount of soil organic carbon. We also have practices such as agroforestry, which we found that it's easier for people to establish tree nurseries, and also sometimes intercropping trees in the edges or just in the middle of their farms. So I'll talk a bit about the benefits of the practices that we found very common in the African continent, the first being minimum soil disturbance. So things such as minimum tillage would fall under minimum soil disturbance. And some benefits that come from this is you're able to protect your soil from erosion, and also you get to save on some costs such as fuel, and also you're able to save on time, and you're also able to save on your labor. So when you also have that minimum soil disturbance, you're able to increase your soil organic matter, and you're also able to prevent actually the emission of some of this carbon from the soil to the environment. So as much as we're actually absorbing that carbon, we need to retain it in the soil. So things such as minimum soil disturbance helps and enhances this retention. And with these practices, you're also able to increase water infiltration. The other practice, such as use of permanent crop cover, or generally use of crop covers, you're able to recycle the nutrients in the soil, and you're also able to increase carbon sequestration. And we have also found that it also helps in suppressing the weeds. And when we have heavy rains, like at the moment we have the El Nino heavily hit in Kenya, we are able to protect our soils from these erosions that may happen. The other thing is crop rotation and intercropping, which is done by things such as maize and beans, which are very common crops in Africa. This helps improve the efficiency in the water use. It also helps control the pests, and it also helps improve soil fertility. And we found that yields are increased. But generally, with all these practices, either one practice or intertwining all these practices, we found that you're able to increase your yields over a period of time. So agroforestry is also a common practice that is promoted and is adapted by farmers. I think this is the most common practice that we have seen in Africa, probably because it's a bit easier to implement. So when you plant a couple of trees in a land that you're also implementing agricultural practices, you're able to shield your livestock and also your crops from wind and also extreme weather conditions. And also that interdependency helps in increasing the crop yields. And you're also able to bring the pollinators into your farm, which has a positive impact on the productivity of your crops. It also helps create microclimates, which are very essential in areas that may be dry or generally just any area. Sometimes these trees also help in slowing the runoff, and they help in reducing the soil erosion in the areas that they have been planted. And above all, they also help sequester carbon, that is absorb the carbon, and improve the soil health while doing so. So regenerative agriculture is not a very easy practice to actually adapt. It involves a lot of behavioral change because you're moving from conventional practices towards more sustainable practices. And so it's difficult to bring that change on a social level, also economically, and also on our soils, because you're so used to the conventional practices. At the initial stages of implementing this regenerative agriculture, we have found that it's actually a bit expensive, but we do look at it in terms of what are the long-term benefits that we're going to be getting. So there's need to have that patience to understand that I might spend there might be some heavy investment cost at the beginning, but this is all worthwhile when you look at the long-term benefits that it's going to bring. And when you're practicing regenerative agriculture, there's need to have that consistency. We've also experienced challenges where I think just going back to what Dr. Loekie said, there's no uniform information on what regenerative agriculture practices are. Sometimes there's also limited information on the innovations that are there to support the adoption of this regenerative agriculture. And also when some of this information is available, it may not be available in accessible or usable formats that may help some small and rural producer who make up a majority of the farmers in Africa. And also we have found that to make this information effective, it's important to package it in a transition-like manner, as opposed to having one-off training session, to ensure that there's that consistency And there's that progressive adoption of these improved practices or regenerative agriculture practices. We also have, I was actually talking to someone who's telling me that in the area they operate in, or in the country they operate in, they have found that there's very little support towards the promotion of this climate smart agriculture from both the public and also the private institutions. So I think one thing that needs to be done is there need to be that increased public and private support to be able to help the farmers who are adapting this improved practices or regenerative agricultural practices by probably helping them get access to things such as inputs, equipment, and also things such as credits and insurance, so they can be able to manage their risks and also invest in long-term climate actions. So as much as there are limits towards promoting and also adapting these regenerative agricultural practices, we have found that there's a high willingness among farmers to adapt the practices because they understand the overall benefits that may come to them, such as improved resilience. They're also able to increase their productivity. They're also able to get other benefits such as carbon credits, which I'll just give a mention about later on. So far, we have seen adoption of these improved agricultural practices, but at a very low rate. Research shows that 2 to 3% of farmers in Africa actually adapting these improved practices. But so far, what has enhanced or accelerated the adoption has been the low technological needs, because when you think about some of these practices, they do not need a lot of technological investment. And the other thing is, as much as we may have few institutions supporting, few private institutions supporting these practices, they are slowly coming up, and they're granting access to things such as inputs. They're also granting access to things such as financing, which are helping in these investments by the farmers. And also farmers generally understanding that this is going to have an impact in the food that I produce in terms of quality. It's also going to bring my income. It's also going to diversify my income, and it's also going to improve my resilience. These are some of the things that are actually encouraging farmers to move towards this, to transit towards these better practices. So right now we have talked about regenerative agriculture practices. We have talked about what are the impacts of these practices. So how do we actually enable farmers adapt these practices, and what are other benefits they can actually get from this? So at Boomitra, what we do is we incentivize farmers with carbon credits for these practices that they have actually adapted, which have led to an increase in the soil organic carbon. So we make farmers realize that, hey, I have actually been adapting improved or regenerative agricultural practices. My soil health has improved. I have been having some good yields at the end of the season. And we are now coming in and helping them realize that you can get additional revenue from the increase in the soil organic carbon. So we do leverage a partnership model where our partners are organizations that are promoting these regenerative agriculture practices, and they're enabling farmers to move or to bring this behavioral change so that they can be able to adapt these practices, which are going to lead to an increase in the soil organic carbon. So us as Boomitra, we bring in our artificial intelligence and remote sensing technology, which is able to quantify the increase in the soil organic carbon over a period of time. And through certifying bodies such as Vera, we're able to generate carbon credits from this soil carbon, from this increase in the soil organic carbon. So these carbon credits are then sold to organizations that have a net zero target. And then a majority of this revenue is then paid back to the farmers. So what we're doing is we are coming to layer on top of what the farmers have already been doing. And we're helping them realize that you can actually be incentivized for adapting these improved agricultural practices. And we are looking at it from a more holistic point of view to help the farmers appreciate the importance of regenerative agriculture practices. Thank you so much for listening. I'll pass it back to Isabel. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Very interesting to see the practices specifically, and by describing them, we can see very clearly the overlap that also Loekie mentioned. So we have the same practices that goes under different names like climate smart agriculture, regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture. So it's very interesting to see specific practices and have a clear idea. And also the carbon credits that you mentioned, I think it's very important for the farmers to know that there is an extra option, but it's an extra plus. So they have so many benefits from applying the actual practices that having also the carbon credit system, it will help them a lot. So thank you so much. I'm sure there will going to be quite a lot of questions for you at the end. For now, I want to pass the microphone to Ernesto Martin Uriarte. He's the head of crop engineering lab at INTA Mendoza. Ernesto does research in viticulture, sustainable soil management practices, agroecology, and waste management. His current project is sustainable soil management in vineyards. Thank you very much, Ernesto, for stepping in and being here to give us the Argentinian Latin American point of view regarding regenerative agriculture. So thank you so much again, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to this seminar. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I will try to share my presentation. So, well, I don't, there. Well, I am replacing José Portela. We work together in a sustainable agriculture group of the regional Mendoza San Juan from the National Institute of Agriculture Technology. It's an institution of research and extension from the Argentinian government. So we will present a regenerative agriculture strategy in horticultural agroecosystem of Western Argentina. So we start working in this topic. We work a lot since maybe 20 years ago, working with focuses in agroecology approaches and also organic agriculture in a place where we have an arid and semi-arid environment in the Western Argentina. We're in the South America, in the center and west of Argentina. And you can see in green all the irrigated oases that well, covers 3% of the total area of the province, Mendoza province. That is one of the very well known because of the agriculture. It's a very important cover crops producer. So we have the water coming from melting snow is crucial for our crops. If we don't have this water, we have very low precipitation, as you can see, 267 millimeters per year. And extreme temperatures, the maximum temperatures in summers goes between 29 to 30 degrees, and in winter, 3 to 5 degrees with frost dangers. So we are expecting that climate change will have an important impact in this kind of climate. So the temperature increase, we are expecting 1.5 in winter, and then 3.5 in the summer. And also less snow precipitation, between 10 and 30% lower, increase in the risk of hail, frost, and wind intensity. So we will have less water availability, and this is critical for our agricultural harvest. So just to show you how important is agriculture in our province, in Mendoza, and for the country, because we are well, the first producers of almond, peach, plum, and grapevines. More than 70% of the cultivation area in Argentina is in Mendoza. And also we are the first cultivation area in vegetables, flowers, and aromatic herbs. So horticultural crops are very important for us. This is a susceptible and fragile agroecosystem that could threaten the entire food system in the future for our country. So we think that the transition to a more sustainable practices is a must in this context, and we look for a more resilient in the context of a climate change concerning water and temperature for us are the main problems. So we were working in agroecology and organic agriculture, and then we have since maybe 2 years ago a question about regenerative agriculture from farmers and also agro-industry, agribusiness companies. And well, what Loekie was explaining in deep because in regenerative focuses, but we like this picture to show you. This is easy that you show you look in the picture, but I would like to just to light some things. In regenerative, this picture try to show differences and similarities of 3 of the most important movements, like regenerative in dark blue, organic in light green, and in dark green, agroecology. So there are a lot of ways that are mixing in because some concepts are the same. So regenerative agriculture mainly focuses in environmental degradation, and then organic also look at the human health as an important topic, and then agroecology take care also from the rural poverty and power imbalances in the entire food system. So the main aim of the regenerative point of view is restore functions in the nature, and also to be a resilient agricultural system. Then for the organic point of view is also important an holistic approach to the human and nature relationship. And then for agroecology, zooms also transformation or looks for the transformation of the entire food system, and also look for the social justice. So this is something that we like to show because it gives an idea of the differences and similarities of the system. So this is what we ask when people ask for their regenerative agriculture. What is? Well, we think is a natural ability. We look for a natural ability to self-renew. We have to help. We have a lot of newspaper and web pages in Argentina talking about the topic, because there are big companies interested, and also the farmers. There are some companies that has their own manual to regenerative agriculture, and also an important institution that are working with sustainable agriculture start a certificate and certification for we know some wineries, for example, here in Mendoza, that are certifying regenerative organics. So what we look in with the regenerative approach, well, mainly we look for the climate change mitigation, looking for nature-based solutions. This nature-based solution achieve carbon sequestration, and then, as Anne mentioned before, we can have carbon credit to give an advantage to the farmer who improve his management in agriculture. So we also know that there are areas with the regenerative agriculture, we intervene in the farm, but also we have an influence not only in the farm, but also in the environment, and then in the territory is expected. So, in short, we look for, we look for the conservation and efficiency of the main natural resources for us that are soil, water, and biodiversity. So in the context of global warming, these conservation practices will help to adaptation and mitigation. So we need do only what is necessary, plan for the long term, sharpen observations in the field, and let nature work for us. And that is important because we need to study and do a lot of research to try to understand the different interaction in the nature to could handle in the future for our farmers and agriculture. So we started to work with farmers who are suppliers of fresh vegetables to the market and also to agri business. And we define as INTA 10 principles that are most important in our agroecosystem context. So we define for the soil, minimal tillage, coverage with active vegetation, plant crop diversification, organic nutrition, preventing wind and water erosion. In the water, avoid leaching losses, efficient use of irrigation, and finally for biodiversity, minimize the use of agrochemicals, conserving natural habitats, and promoting functional diversity. So how can we put this principle into practices in horticulture? Well, just to show you some examples in our region. Well, we have rotation and also service crops, like you can see beds, for example, here. Okay. This is not working, but this is another service crop. Maintaining, we will try to maintain living coverage through the most part of the year, using, for example, this kind of tools or roller cover crops instead of tilling the soil. So this is another example of minimum tillage with pumpkins and also some garlics, working with dead plant covers and vegetable mulching. This is another example of fruits and garlic in the interspace, the crop. Also working some experiences in organic nutrition with manures and also with residues from plants harvest, composting it, and also making some biofertilizers or bio inputs, working also with compost tea to improve nutrition. We also trying to include strip cultivation, for example, garlic with strip of rye and beet mixing. This gives some benefits. The crop rotation of these strips also, and we look for an heterogeneous covers who could increase the interaction between roots and also has a work in restriction of pests. We also know that it's important to redesign the environment, not only in the farm, but also in the entire territory or environment in the farm. And well, we try to there are some examples in other parts of Argentina of working with the government also to try to do ecological corridors. Also working with flower strips between the main crops to attract beneficials. And we know, and we are convinced that there are no one strategy for each farm, as already some of the speakers told, because there are a lot of variables that you have to consider. So final reflections. Well, the conventional crops are intensive in care and are heavily dependent on external help. So we have to see regenerative agriculture as let nature work for us. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention. This was fast, but just to try to show some experience of our point of view.
Thank you, Ernesto, and thank you to all the speakers for their presentations. We have lots of questions in the Q&A tool. We are, however, first I'm gonna launch a short poll because we are, Stella and I are interested to know why the people who have joined us today are here. I mean, it's a very simple. It's going to take just a couple of seconds for you to answer. For all the participants, it will stay open just for 1 minute. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to start with this Q&A with one question that is specifically to Loekie. But if anyone wants to jump in, you are welcome. So it's a question from Muhammad Amir Khan in the toolbox. I'm going to read it out loud. Respected Loekie, thanks for introducing regenerative agriculture concept. This concept is still unknown to most plant scientists and specifically to farmers in many developing countries. Are there any initiatives that can help in introducing these concepts to new and potential customers? Do you know of any of these initiatives?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Not sure in the context he is working in, but actually this is what we really want to do in the coming 3 years. We want to map out the regenerative initiatives in the first case in Europe, but then also to a more global level if we have the opportunity. But some international organization really supporting the regenerative agriculture is Regenerative International. I think they're a great source of information. We have also Terra Genesis, which also work on a more global context. But I'm not sure where Mohammed is coming from and in which context he is asking this question.
We don't have the information right now. So Mohammed, if you may, you can answer the question in the chat, and maybe we can expand.
Yeah.
So. So meanwhile, I finalized the poll. So almost 70% of the people answering, I'm sharing. So almost 70% of you have answered that I'm curious about regenerative agriculture, and that's why I'm here. That's cool. So thank you. And then 16% of you answered I'm transitioning from conventional to regenerative agriculture. We hope that this is being useful for you. So don't hesitate to ask your questions right now or later on through the different means that are available. And then there is another 16% that answer other. So if you want to expand in the chat, that would be very interesting for us. So Stella, do you want to jump in with more questions?
Perfect. Yes, I want to mention that I'm very happy that to see that we have farmers among the audience. It's great that you're joining such activities, and we hope that we'll give you as many information as possible, and that's an extra positive that the video will stay available as in our YouTube pages. So for you that are asking about for the presentations, my first answer is, of course, go to YouTube. You will find all the information there, and we will ask later on our presenters if it's possible for them to share their presentations with you. So I wanted to ask Anne, but I see she left. So maybe it's a mistake, an internet connection error. So I will just pause the question and feel free, Loekie and Ernesto, to jump in, because it's quite generic, but I think very, very interesting to mention. So as Anne mentioned, it's usually quite challenging to convince farmers in adopting regenerative farming. I've experienced it myself, and for good reason in many cases. So there's a specific question for how to market, how to help farmers, give them some ideas and solutions in set cropping system. So when they cultivate together wheat and rice, which is one of the practices that mentioned, like the intercropping or legumes and other cover crops. So how to help them transit to and adopt new production technologies, marketing the end product. It could be quite challenging when changing this focus. So what's your experience working with farmers and trying to convince them that is a good reason to transit to such a system?
Maybe I can go first and give my suggestion, then maybe Ernesto can go afterwards. So I heard also this, I don't know this context of rice and wheat, so I work in a completely different context, but we do face the same issues with farmers. So we have actually quite some farmers in our network aiming to transition towards regenerative agriculture. And actually they all say the same thing, and it's the biggest barrier, I would say, for them is it needs to be financially attractive for them. If they cannot make money out of it, they will not do it. And the second one is knowledge, so how to do it. So I think what we need to try to do is make it financially attractive for them. So if you can create a system where they actually benefit financially from it, it would be great. Because now in the Netherlands and in the European context, farmers get paid for their produce and maybe on their production levels. But if they also get paid to improve their biodiversity or improve their carbon, and they get paid for that, we make it already financially attractive for them. And then the second challenge is, of course, okay, how should they do that? So there's also maybe a knowledge gap and a need for farm level tools which are easy to use for them to actually show how to apply these practices. But currently, especially this financial system is in Europe largely lacking, I would say.
Thank you very much, Loekie. Yeah, I think both the Global Plant Council and Wikifarmer will try to share any information possible to help at least cover this gap in knowledge. And of course, all of your institutions and organizations are doing the best in the start of the research and working closely with the farmers. So I think together we can accomplish even more things and help even more farmers transit. Isabel? Ernesto, yes, please.
Yes, I would like to share our experience because we work a lot with wineries or vineyard producers. So the problem is not only in vineyards, also in horticultural crop. The problem is that the transition to this kind of system. You have crops that are very dependent on fertilizer, for example, pesticides. So then in vineyards, you have a low harvest in the first transition years. So this is impacting the profit of the farmer. So you have also better quality in the grapevine, but not always the winery pay for this quality. So this is a problem here. Then I understand that the farmer is doing something good for the entire planet. So somebody has to consider that. For example, there are in some places the taxes were lower for this kind of farmers, so who wanted to go in transition to a more sustainable system. So I think should be in that way, because you probably have an impact in most of the crops if you are going to change.
That is true, and thank you for that, because it gives me the opportunity to have a follow-up question that it comes to us a lot. Usually when you suggest to a farmer to transit to a system, as you say, the profit, okay, it could be long-term for them, but usually it's an extra advantage if he or she can see an adding value to their end product. So for organic farming, it's very specific. I mean, you can get certified for organic cultivation, but is there any certification existing in different regions? You can tell me, at least for Europe or Latin America, for a more generic system like regenerative agriculture?
Yes, here in Argentina, you can certificate the regenerative agriculture. There are the same certification that that works also with organics.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So yeah, in Europe, I think there's no official legislation by government. It's not recognized yet. Organic is, of course. I know there's some more private sector certification frameworks, like you have in the US, the Regenerative or Organic certification, but it is not really recognized by any European governments. So I think that is problematic. Also, the certification frameworks out there are highly debated. So they're not scientifically robust yet. They mainly work on practices, but this is maybe a whole other discussion. How should we monitor or verify if farmers actually are regenerative or not. But in Europe, I don't see an official certification yet.
That was my understanding too, for Europe at least. Yes.
I have another follow-up question on this. So if Ernesto has said that there is a plummeting on production at the very beginning of the transition, how long does it take until it recovers? Or does it recover at some point? I assume the answer is yes.
Well, we saw that at least 3 years from the converting to organics, you have low harvest, and then starting to get better, but not always you reach the same harvest between comparing with conventional crops. And this is, we think that this is something that is expectable because there is a completely different agroecosystem. You don't have to expect the same if you go or work conventional. So this should be in that way, because you are doing different things, a way to do things, and you can expect the same results.
So that's why the different source of incomes or tax layoffs are necessary.
This is well for grapevines, but we have another experiences in the crops, extension crops, for example, soybeans, in the in the other part in Buenos Aires, for example, you have big crops of soybeans, and if you go organic, maybe you have the same harvest and low, you use low inputs, so you have more profit. So this is another agroecosystem completely different.
Interesting.
Isabel, do you want to take the next question?
No, you go first.
Okay. So I've seen a question from Rupert Knowles. He says the least bad way forward for most species worldwide turns out to be land sparing rather than land sharing. So for biodiversity, land sparing is better than land sharing. Is regenerative compatible with land pairing? Maybe Ernesto, could give it a try, because you discussed about strips with flowers, and if it's in the same area, or Loekie, if you prefer.
I don't know if I understood well the question. Sorry.
So Isabel, I don't know if you can elaborate. So there's, it says that there are two different ways to look at it: the land sparing and land sharing. I'm not sure if I know the practices specifically.
I can maybe try to explain, or does Isabel want to do it?
No, please, Loekie, step here.
Okay. Yeah, I think actually it's a really nice debate, this topic. So the land sparing, land sharing issue is about, should we intensify agriculture and therefore have more room for nature areas? That is normally considered the land sparing issue, or extensify agriculture and make it part of nature. Then you extensify. So I can give a little perspective on it first, maybe then after Ernesto can do it, because I think he has more experience on this topic. But the question, I think, was, can regenerative agriculture also be part of the land sparing, right? In general, it's considered a land sharing option. I think it actually can be. Of course, first you need to ask yourself, what is land sparing? it's about intensifying agriculture. And if you talk from a Dutch or an European perspective, if you talk about intensifying, people always think, okay, this means directly to put a lot of cows in a barn. That's intensifying. It doesn't have to be the case. To be a bit provocative in this sense, like it can also mean that we all need to go for permaculture or silvopasture systems, because these are quite dense systems and also, belong to intensification. I would say. I think one part which is really problematic with regenerative agriculture and the land sparing issue, if you talk about more cows per hectare or whatever, is the issue of animal welfare. I think that is still really important in approaches to regenerative farming. And in the European context, if we talk about land sparing, it in the end does mean a lot of livestock on a hectare or even landless systems. So in that case, I would not say it would be a part of land sparing. But in general, I think if you look at the more European or global context, it's not maybe the question, but I don't think we should have a discussion on should we all go land sparing or land sharing. I think we need a combination fitted to the context. But maybe Ernesto can add on that.
No, thank you. I agree with Loekie in this point of view. Maybe we don't have this deep question in our country because maybe we have a lot of land to do agriculture. We don't have the problems from Europe. So, but what I think that maybe we produce enough food for the whole world, so we don't need to intensify. So we need to distribute better the food, and also to do the things better than we are doing agriculture. So I don't know. It's my point of view.
So should I jump in, Stella, with a question?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think this question might be best for Loekie because he has been the one explaining what regenerative agriculture is supposed to mean from different perspectives and how it overlaps with other concepts. So the question is from Jorge Acosta. What is the main difference between regenerative agriculture and agroecology? Because, and he explains, we know in agroecology we are able to restore agroecosystems with high levels of degradation. We call that agroecological restoration.
So yeah, good question. And actually, I get these questions a lot if I talk about regenerative agriculture. And maybe first we can draw the question a bit bigger. And how does it compare in general to other approaches of farming? And it's actually an interesting question. Because to be really honest, I'm not always a big fan of the word regenerative agriculture because it's again a new term on the power of approaches of sustainable farming. I think what is interesting are the objectives it has, and these are very much overlapping with agroecology, but also conservation agriculture, climate smart, whatsoever. Of course, there are some differences, but if you look at it, most of them are largely overlapping. And I think at the point we go for certification, because that's always the next step, is maybe we should avoid to use terms like regenerative and just focus on outcomes. Just say, hey, what is the potential of this farm regarding greenhouse gas emissions or soil carbon? Because then you don't have to use or differentiate between regenerative or agroecology anymore. But I did some reading on agroecology as well. I think agroecology is a much broader term. So it's really, instead of an approach for only farming, it's really more of a movement. So it takes also a lot of social aspects into account, of social justice. And I don't see that coming back so clearly in regenerative agriculture. So in regenerative agriculture, it does have a social dimension, which discusses animal welfare, discusses labor conditions, sometimes even the happiness of farmers. But I think in agroecology, even education is a big part of it, and I don't see that really coming back in regenerative agriculture. So I think there's a scale difference in there to be short.
That is true, and that is very nice having specific examples of the practices and the outcome, because we're usually getting lost with all this this terminology and the definitions and the overlap. There is a question from Dr. Sahid Ahmad about where livestock enters the equation. So, what is the role of livestock in regenerative agriculture? Loekie, you discussed about animal welfare, but could you please elaborate a bit more on how maybe a farmer having cows or other farm animals could join regenerative agriculture movement?
Yeah, but I think maybe Ernesto has also something to say about this with his vineyard, because I work also with vineyards in Europe, not so much, but I did a little bit of work on that. But I think animals have a great and important role in regenerative agriculture. In the overview I showed before, you saw the activities, and one of these activities was mixed farming. And mixed farming means that you actually mix arable system of cropping systems with animal systems. Because I think if you produce crops, you always need fertilization, and this fertilization does not have to come from artificial fertilizers, but from animal manures. So you always need to have these animals to an extent in the system. And I think also these animals can be used as a tool, and therefore I refer to what Ernesto's work. If you work with perennial cropping systems, this is a great opportunity for silvopasture systems. So integrate the livestock in the system, maybe in this case not cows, that maybe it's too big for the vineyards, they will harm the grapes, but you can maybe use chicken, for example, which are helping with the weeding, etc. So I think they have a really important role to play. I think if you look more at the global scale, we need to find an optimal balance. So how much livestock can we have to have enough fertilization for our cropping systems? Currently, this is of course not in balance. Currently, we have so much livestock that, at least I speak now for Europe and especially the Netherlands, we are exporting our manure to Germany and to other countries because we have too much. And this was about the unhappy farmers. They needed to reduce their nitrogen inputs, and also slash their livestock numbers with 50%, which is insane. Farmers going bankrupt because of that. But that's highly problematic. So we need to find this balance, but they have definitely a big role in regenerative agriculture.
That is true. And then we go to circular agriculture and different kind of systems, but same practices again. There is another question about, we discuss about the transition, we discuss about adopting these practices and becoming profitable in the long term. But someone is asking how we can count this long term, how long is that? How many years we take to transition and start becoming a profitable system for the farmer? It's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah, I think this is a really context-specific question. So Ernesto already actually explained this already a little bit. He told about the vineyards. If you transition towards organic, it took him 3 years already. In Europe, we see, if you look at arable systems, if you already only move from organic to organic, it takes 5 years for the system to actually have only the yields a little bit back. If you stop using pesticides, for example. But what Ernesto said, and that is really important, I think, to realize, of course, this transition period is a bit tough because you have reduced yields. Maybe later your yields will build up a little bit again, or actually for sure. How long it takes, that is dependent on your farming system. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. We produce enough food. We need to distribute it better, I think. And then it comes only to the incentivization. So indeed, farmers will lose a little bit of yield, especially in this transition period. But if you can make sure that they still earn the same amount of money every year, it doesn't matter for the farmer, I think.
That is true.
Yeah.
And the transition period, as you mentioned, it's very, very specific depending on the crop, depending on the system. So for organic farming, as you said, it's 3 years, it's the same for olive trees, etc. So from 3 years and on, people can start earning extra money thanks to the certification and the adding value to the product. But it really depends on the problem that someone is facing. So it's not only for the environment, it's for addressing specific issues. I mean, with regenerative agriculture and all these kind of systems, it's a more holistic approach. So you can convert, you can have a better weed management, and then the efficiency will depend on, you know, your seed bank of weeds at the soil. So you may need extra years, or to improve the soil characteristics, it may need extra time, but really depends also on how many of these practices someone will implement. So we have to have a more specific frame to actually start answering this kind of questions. But you will surely start seeing a difference within a few years. So I think around 3 to 5 years, you will start seeing the first examples. And we have met with some amazing organizations working with regenerative agriculture in olive trees in Greece as well, saying that even after 5 years of using the pruning residues and putting them back to the surface of the soil, they managed to see a great improvement in drought resistance of their trees. So you will find many positive aspects of it in different times of the year, of the season, of the transition. Really depends. Isabel, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. Let me check because we have so many.
I got one if you want to gain time.
Well, I'm thinking of taking the one from Catherine Bertham. Okay. So again, this is addressed to Loekie. So amazing framework, thanks Loekie. I'm wondering how you can match your framework to the outcomes we may desire from regenerative agriculture, meaning soil carbon, soil biodiversity, etc.
I'm sorry, can you maybe rephrase it?
So is there, I think but this can be translated, is there, or can you make a direct link between regenerative agriculture outcomes and improvement of soil carbon, soil biodiversity, and others? I assume.
Good. I think I understand, but I think to mention this first, the figure I showed is not a framework, so it is a reflection from the literature. It's not that I think that regenerative should be this or that. This is purely a reflection from definitions in the literature. In another study, we did come up with a framework how to monitor regenerative agriculture, and there we show the indicators which can be used to actually see if regenerative agriculture helps to improve soil carbon or soil biodiversity. So yeah, if this framework is matching and already shows the outcomes, I don't know, I cannot answer that question. I think we need to monitor that first. What I can tell a little bit about that, about the framework we developed is many of the initiatives, and you see that same in organic agriculture, use practice-based indicators to monitor if a farm is organic, or in this case regenerative or not. We are really trying to move away from that and use more result and outcome-based indicators. Because if you stop using tillage, we know there's probably a positive effect on soil biodiversity, on fungi networks. Or if you use crop residues and you bring them back to the soil, use cover crops, there's a positive effect on carbon. But exactly how much is always unknown. Because it depends, the effects depend on the farming system, on the local context, on other practices you are using on the farm. And maybe you indeed stop with tillage, but if you still use a lot of pesticides, you will not see an improvement in your soil biodiversity. So I think this framework is a reflection from the literature, but this is not enough to actually tell you if regenerative has a positive effect on these outcomes. You really need to have a monitoring framework from that with needs practice-based indicators, but especially also result and outcome-based indicators. But yeah, if I go into detail to that, that's a really complex story. That's for another time.
So, Estela, do you want to ask another question? We are over time, but we're fine.
Maybe we can go for one more. So the question is from Arabian Baines. Is can regenerative methods completely remove the need for nitrogen fertilizer produced to be added in the field? So I could give it a try, and either of the speakers wants to add something, please go ahead, because you have a more specific idea. So it really, again, depends on the system. I think it could be a bit easier on perennial crops. I have more experience working with olive trees. Could be similar with vineyards too. There are a lot of research and data to see what is being removed with the harvest from the field, and how much amount of crop residues can be used to compensate for some of the nutrients. So to a limit, that's something that can be calculated, but usually it's not possible to compensate with crop residues the whole amount that has been removed. Of course, here it depends on how intensive the system is, how large the yields you had in mind to harvest are. So really depends, and depends on what we mean with nitrogen fertilizers. I mean, manure also and compost have a lot of nitrogen, and it's part of the regenerative method, so can be combined. Ernesto, I see you agree. Would you like to elaborate?
Oh, yes, we have, we could, for example, in our soils, we have not enough nitrogen, so we need a lot to add. So we could replace the synthetic fertilizers, working with compost and also some liquid biofertilizers. So, and this nitrogen is very different from the chemical fertilizers, so it's more stable. So, and goes doing nutrition all around the year. So, well, I think that is possible mainly in vineyards, this is our experience, but also working some horticultural crops.
Thank you for the input.
Okay.
Well, there are still many questions here at the Q&A tool. I think we're quite over time, and we try to answer as many as possible. However, we'll try to keep them, both me and Isabel, and see if we can communicate them to the speakers later on, or we can answer them through maybe some articles, etc.
Yeah, there is. I only want to highlight one question that is for Ernesto. There is apparently an agro ecologist from Colombia wanting to contact with you. So if you want to share your contact details, it's maybe a good moment right now.
Okay.
So it's I mean, your email, I suppose, it would be enough. And then there are some requests about literature. So especially from Loekie, because Loekie has been mentioned in different articles. So maybe we can share in the email with the link to the YouTube channel, the YouTube video, we can share some of the links to the literature as well, so that people could expand there. So in that way, we could cover some of the questions that have been left out during this Q&A session. I think we are done. Thank you so much for the over 70 people who have remained with us until the very end through all the Q&A, and looking forward for our next webinar. From our side in the Global Plan Council, we will host a couple or maybe even 3 webinars in November, leading up to the Climate Summit in Dubai. So keep in touch and keep watching our space with information. We are gathering still the speakers. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much, Ernesto, Loekie, and Anne, for being here and share your knowledge with all of us. And Stella, you want to add something?
Thank you all so much. It's a constant effort from all of us that we are with one way or another part of the agri-food ecosystem to try to simplify information, organize them. So thank you all for putting all this information and for this very vivid discussion. We'll follow up in our site with some extra content about regenerative agriculture and all of these kind of other forms and practices that we mentioned here. So please stay tuned, and if you are interested, you can contact me directly to share your knowledge and disseminate your content and become a contributing author at Wikifarmer. I look forward to see you again in one of our next webinars.
Thank you very much. It was a really pleasure.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.